Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
Again?
Nothing up my sleeve.
My name is Gabby. I'm 12 years old, and I'm pregnant as...
Presto!
Wrong hat.
I think a 7.5.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
What happens in childhood doesn't always stay in childhood. Today we discuss arrested development and how lack of autonomy at a young age can lead to a lack of accountability at an older age. Y'all stay tuned. Salute and welcome back to Unknown Soldier Radio.
Get to the chopper!
And I'm Dog Tags. Yeah. There is something awry in today's society where it's becoming normalized behavior for men to lay flat and to become mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, and verbally dormant. See, the revolution will not be televised, but rather socialized into non-socialization for educational purposes only of the resocialization in society. Men want to be women, and women want to be men, and the men who are men who don't want to be women don't want to be men, and the women who are women and don't want to be men don't want to be women. Oh! See, the social construct of society predicates that people dictate their own social reality. Society should be different than culture, and culture should be different than society. And since culture represents the beliefs and practices of a particular people inside of a group of society, then society will represent the beliefs and practices of the world of those people outside of said culture in the group. And since the first teachers in society of culture that belongs to a group are women, and she raises her children with the non-constructive use of the internet, i.e. Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, aka social media, here we are.
My name is Gabby. I'm 12 years old, and I'm pregnant as...
We all have three versions of ourselves. For me, it's me, myself, and I. For you, it's you, yourself, and you. And one of the first philosophers and scholars to theorize and to contextualize these self-beings was Sigmund Freud, which brings us to the ID, the ego, and superego. These three many versions of ourselves are unique because they all have different personalities located within. And these three personalities are just hallways that will lead to different doors, and one of the doors being normalized and socialized behavior. Another door number 2, is psychopathy, which is unnormalized and unsocialized behavior.
You can't make this shit up.
And that's why arrested development is important, because as an adult you can still be infantilized, and as a child you may be forced to take on roles that you're not ready for. Arrested development is just a micro-cancerous cousin to PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. And the layman's term / definition to arrested development would just be somebody who's stuck in time, and which is different from post-traumatic stress disorder, as where you're probably over a certain age, whereas arrested development usually happens prepubescent, at an early age of emotional development, and it could be from trauma, grief, or neglect. And no matter which one of the three that it is, this problem becomes a self-problem because it's an unresolvable problem that you should be able to self-automate, but the lack of trust in your own ability to take autonomy over your actions has become detrimental. And before we go any further, I only think that it's fair if I explain the differences in the premise of the two sciences, which is psychological science and sociological science, which gives us the word psychosocial science, and it'll give us a better definition of the word arrested development. Psychosocial, I'm getting ahead of myself. Psychological science is internal science. It's internal science of the mind. It's not only what you think, but how you think, but it's limited into the constructs of the mind, whereas sociological science is an external factor of your thoughts and your predetermined notions of how you'll go about society on a daily basis. And just being a human being, or just being an aware person in general, we automatically take autonomy over all our actions, whether they be societal or environmental. Whether it be fact versus trust, or outside versus inner, or target versus random, or these are all the UPCs of science, which is based on the ability to understand, the ability to predict, and the ability to control. So of course, as an adult, you wouldn't take accountability or responsibility for your problems or your actions, because you were never nurtured in your autonomy. You were never supported in your autonomy. You were never allowed to grow in your autonomy. You were never shown what to do in your autonomy. And what's worse than that, you were always made to feel ashamed and guilty in your autonomy for being a child.
You can't make this shit up.
And before I let y'all go, because I don't want to get into quantitative research versus qualitative research and reliability versus validity, I did want to reference a sociologist, philosopher, and psychologist by the name of George Herbert Mead. And so when I say me, myself, and I, which is the you, yourself, and you, which would be described by Freud's ID, ego, and superego, George Herbert Mead had an interesting take on it, because the me would be the objective self. The myself, or self, according to George Herbert Mead, would be the self that's not part of the body, because he said it doesn't exist. It's just the self-social, and the I will always be the subjective self. And there's nothing I value more than as to protect the autonomy of young boys and young girls. Salute from Dog Tags.
My name is Gabby. I'm 12 years old, and I'm pregnant as fuck.
Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
Again?
See? Nothing up the sleeve.